Thank you.
You bet.
Great. How about Lucia? You want to go ahead and introduce yourself, Lucia?
Hi, Lucia Hubner. My husband and I own Beech Tree Farm in Hopewell. I'm the chair of the nominating committee. So when you see me coming, I'll be asking what you can do to help NOFA.
Great, great. Now, I've probably missed some farmers. Is there any other farmer who wants to introduce themselves? All right. Well, okay, then we're with that, I think back over to Tony to play the video.
All right. We'll
You
get
wanna
the
give a
video.
little intro?
Of course. Well, no, it's fine. The here we go. Let me spotlight, and I'm going to share my screen with the sound. There we go. All right, so what you're about to see is kind of, for lack of a better words, the year in review. We've done a whole bunch more, but this is just some real exciting stuff to show the impact of what we've been doing. Man, if that doesn't get you excited, right? We've done some awesome stuff, and it keeps going. It feels like we're accumulating more and more fresh connections. I'm excited to get out of COVID with all of you and see what exciting stuff 2021 grow season has.
So I'm just gonna briefly take us all through just a few slides, and then I'm gonna hand it over to Amy Youngblood, who is standing by, and I'm hoping, Tony, have you seen Eric sign on? But we'll hopefully we can introduce Eric as well.
I'll keep my eyes peeled.
Okay, great. So anyway, as Tony said, we have done quite a bit this year. So let me just give a quick recap. You know what we were obviously, along with all of you, facing dramatic challenges this year. So we actually stepped back and we took our entire board online. So every meeting was online, every discussion was a phone call. It was quite different than it normally is. We also onboarded a new board president, Mike, and I also joined as the ED in February. I just want to take a moment to recognize Adrian Hyde, who we should have thanked at last year's annual meeting. Unfortunately, we canceled it. But after 4 years of long, hard work, really restoring the health of NOFA, New Jersey, he stepped down in last February. And so thank you to Adrian for all his contributions to NOFA, New Jersey. Then we reactivated a bunch of committees. We had many of these committees in process, but we actually started them up. So we have the Outreach Committee, the Policy Committee, the Education Committee, Finance and Nominating Committee. I think if you're online tonight and are interested in joining us as a volunteer, please let us know. All the committees are looking for active volunteers and input and support from the community. So something to check out online, which is actually a good segue to the fact that we did overhaul our website. So if you have been on our website recently, you know that we've completely redone our website thanks to the generosity of a donor, and then and some really talented web support talent. So we've done that. We've also activated our YouTube channel. There's over 100 videos on YouTube now that you can reference. We basically, every time we have an event now, we post the video online. So help yourself to all those videos. They're publicly posted and at your disposal for reference. And then, you know, another magical addition who we've all been enjoying is Tony. So Tony, thank you very much for joining the NOFA team and helping us with our production. We couldn't have done this year without you. So really appreciate your help.
It's my pleasure. I love having good purpose.
Well, you know, many of you know that Tony and his wife actually have a farm as well. And Andrea, I should recognize you. Thank you for putting up with all of us, because Tony's been running all over the state videoing everything. And I know that takes him away from his farming work. So I appreciate your patience on that front.
She's listening while driving home from work. So you guys are her NPR, or we are her NPR for the moment. And
very good.
So don't respond, Andrea. Keep your eyes on the road.
So so yes, we have been online all year long, but I will say that we're very hopeful that by the summer we can have a socially distanced event, and then in the fall we can have a good old-fashioned NOFA event. So stay tuned for those in-person events, which we expect to be able to announce soon. And then let's see, other things we have, we've brought on a whole bunch of new staff. So Josefina Ewens and Laura Robertson are working as marketing managers, and Sean Riley is working as a finance manager. And we're really delighted to have a full staff again. So yay, welcome staff. All right, so going on to the next slide, just to recap, we actually did 50 events this year, and we had we had 1,700 event registrations. We've stabilized our membership at about 350 members, and our membership revenue is also relatively stable at about $20,000 in income. The website has responded to our overhaul of it with 10,000 users in the past year and 13,000 sessions since we launched a new site. If you're curious to know about our source of traffic, 55% is from organic search, 24% from referral. So that's our partners. And then 18% is direct searches for NOFA New Jersey. So if you're looking at our membership and saying, hey, Nagisa, that's kind of low, the truth is that's true, but we also have 5,500 followers on Facebook, a couple thousand on Insta, and a couple thousand on Twitter. So I think we're doing quite well in our public outreach. And if you look at those stats, they have grown remarkably across the state. So we're very grateful for the statewide participation that online viewing can provide. And then the YouTube channel, which I think allows people to miss an event and still check in with us, has 112 subscribers. It had nearly 4,000 views and 38,000 impressions. So we're doing quite well on that front as well. So I think we're quite grateful for everyone's participation, and I thank everyone, all the farmers who have contributed content to the events, and the public for participating. So then the next slide is something that we have, we should have been doing all along, but we have published our financials on the site, and also we're sharing them with you here. As you can see, NOFA has consistently for the last couple of years been very stable financially, with our total assets exceeding a couple $100,000, and very few liabilities, and we really have had quite generous support from individuals and business contributions. We've made quite a bit of money through the winter conference, and we've also made good progress on government grants. So you'll see a pretty balanced review that we have many sources of funds, and we feel very grateful and blessed that everyone is still donating, contributing, and supporting NOFA New Jersey. So thank you all for your support. So then this is sort of exciting for us because we can now honestly say that we have a full year of events planned. Thank you, Al Johnson, for leading our education committee and for all the education committee volunteers. There's so many of you, and you have done a really great job of suggesting events, contributing content, and helping us to pull them off. So just so you know, there's something for everyone. We have a big gardening event, a series starting in April. It's actually co-hosted by NOFA New Jersey and the Drumthwacket Foundation. It'll be live streamed from the Drumthwacket property, and will be hosted by the Governor's Mansion. And it will be a lovely way to bring attention to the fact that you can produce your own edible garden in your backyard. So we hope we can encourage a bunch of avid gardeners throughout the state to participate. We also have a perennial intercropping workshop planned with Eric Jones-Meyer for the fall. And Doug Talamy has agreed to present Bringing Nature Home, which will be a lovely talk that he gives in the fall. For the farmers, switching gears, we have monthly organic open houses, which Mike has been hosting at North Slope Farm. They've been virtual throughout the pandemic, but we are hoping that by the summer we can actually encourage people to show up in person again. So that'll be great. Jess Niederer, thank you very much. She held, I think, the 13th year of Exploring the Small Farm Dream. And we're going to offer Tilling the Soil of Opportunity, which is a course that we used to do. We did our last course in 2017, and we're bringing back that course for farmers who need help writing their business plans. Al brought back Road to Certification last fall, and we're going to bring it back again this year. He's been offering it a couple times a year for New Jersey and for the other NOFAs. So that's a great way to access Road to Certification. which I should just take a moment to encourage everyone. If you're on the phone and you're actually a farmer, but not certified organic, please consider it. It's really a very rewarding thing to have, to support your operation. And I think that we have many fine examples right on the phone today. And then finally, and last but not least, we're very excited to say that we've been continuing our Journey Person Mentoring. It's our farmer to farmer mentoring program. And if you are a farmer, you can consider joining our Journey Person program. So I'd encourage you to consider that. And then last but not least, we do have farmer talks, crops, pests, and more. And those are every third Monday. And that's a pretty exciting event too. And we have a number of great speakers scheduled for this year's farmer events. Most of these events are either multiple week series or a scheduled monthly event. And I've called attention to the ones that are coming up at the bottom of the screen. The first one is our Urban Farming Organic Open House, which is happening at the end of March. And then we're starting a fabulous cooking series where we highlight many of the oldest organic farms in the state and their CSAs. And we're partnering with the Suppers program and Jam and Crepes to offer a cooking class alongside that, so that you can meet the farm, learn about their CSAs, and also learn something about the recipes that can be used to enjoy the produce off their farms. We also have a mushroom talk that's coming up in April. And the monthly gardening series kicks off in April as well. And this is a bit of exciting news. We have Mark Bittman, who is going to be speaking on May 16th, and he's going to be talking about our food system. And then, put a circle on it. On June 20th, we're going to have our first socially distant in-person event at North Slope Farm to celebrate the summer solstice. So we're very happy to be bringing back our in-person gatherings, because we know that we've gotten a lot of feedback from all of you, hoping that we would do more of those. Okay. So I did want to say that, take a few moments to remind you guys that we do have a strategic plan at NOFA New Jersey, and the board was very helpful in revising that strategic plan and revamping it. And so I'm putting it up on the screen here so you can see that we're very focused on our vision for NOFA New Jersey to be dedicated to supporting organic food and agriculture in New Jersey through education, technical assistance, and policy action. We want to play an important role in shaping the development of New Jersey's food system, and will support education, advocacy, and research that discovers, highlights, and implements environmentally and economically favorable changes to farming practice. We'll support those practices that reduce negative environmental impact and support improvements to the population. And we're going to do that with the goals that are listed here. We haven't done as much on research in the past few years, but I can honestly say that I'm very grateful to the partnership with Rutgers University, because many of the professors there have begun to partner with us more to implement bigger and broader research plans together with NOFA. And I thank the farmers who have been participating, because that's critical to our partnership with Rutgers. So I think that is all I wanted to say about the strategic plan, except that we're going to just go to the objectives. This is a long list. I'm not going to walk you through all of them. These are posted on our site, so you can look at them more closely, but that gives you some idea of the ambitions the board set for all of us. And I think these are very doable in the next 3 years. And we really are very focused on improving many of the metrics that are important for a nonprofit farming organization. So with all of that said, there is one important note, because we wrote the strategic plan in March and April of this year, when COVID was upon us and many issues were facing us, but they weren't necessarily first and foremost in our mind when we were writing it. So I did want to call out that we do think that there are some important things that are missing from a strategic plan, which we're trying to address and will incorporate as going forward. But there were really two main important conclusions that we had. One, that we need to do more to impact the food insecurity in New Jersey. In September, there was a report published that 1.2 million people are food insecure in our state, or 13.5% of the population. And it was actually projected to increase after September. So I'm sure that number is actually higher today than it was then. And this is a pretty serious issue, which we would like to partner with the farmers and food banks and the gleaning organizations across the state to support the food insecurity issue that we're all facing. And then I'm hoping that Eric has joined us by now, but there was also an important thing that we needed to note, which is that in 2020, there were actually no BIPOC certified organic farmers in New Jersey. However, you probably know this, there's 46% of the state is BIPOC. So if you can just imagine, almost half of our state is represented by diversity, and yet we have very little diversity in our certified organic farms. And so we're going to need everybody who's on this call tonight to help us and guide us through this journey to encourage diversity in our state.
Hold on, Nagisa.
Yes. Yes.
Forgive me, maybe I've been under a rock, but what is BIPOC?
Oh,
Maybe there's others of us that don't know what
Yeah.
BIPOC means.
It means it's Black, Indigenous, and people of color. Okay, so so it basically means non-white. It is probably the simplest way to put it.
Got it. I've just never heard that term.
Oh, good. Thanks, Tony.
BIPOC.
Thanks for asking for
BIPOC.
the clarification. Yeah, but you know, it's not all bleak. The first Asian farmer was certified in October of 2020. And of course, that was me, but you know, now at least there's some diversity amongst the certified farmers. We also we got some Hispanic representation on our staff. Josefina is African American and Hispanic, and so we're very delighted to have her join our staff. And we welcomed our first African American farmer to the board in February of 2021. So you know, we're not just saying that we're going to do this, we're doing it, guys. So, you know, don't be discouraged by the fact that the numbers don't look great. Our intent is in the right place, and I know we're going to make great progress on this in the next few years. We've also, I'm happy to see that a bunch of people signed in, but we formed wonderful partnerships with urban farmers around the state, community gardens, and gleaning organizations and food banks. So, you know, what we think that one of the ways that we're going to make progress on this food insecurity in the state is actually to broaden our network and work less in a silo as NOFA New Jersey and work in partnership with many organizations across the state. And then last but not least, we have added 2 Asian farmers to our Journey Person program, and we're excited about that. It's a way to improve our diversity and support them, and hope that they can get certified this year. So we're working with many folks, and this is another chance for me to remind everyone that if you're not part of the Journey Person program as a mentor or as a mentee or Journey Person, that we would encourage you to reach out to us. So anyway, that's pretty much all I had to say, except that I really do want to thank everyone who is on the call tonight. Thank you for your partnership, your participation, mentorship, friendship, sponsorship, and support. And I really, I thank you personally because you've all been very supportive in my first year as the NOFA Executive Director. And I appreciate your partnership, and it has made all the difference in the world. And hopefully I won't let you down. And I really do hope that you'll let us know how we can serve you better as a staff and organization. And I've put our email here, which you probably know it already, but please do, if you have any thoughts, suggestions, please share your thoughts and suggestions with us.
Hey, Nagisa, I'm going to throw something at you that came in, which is definitely worth revisiting. So Virginia Lamb,
Yes.
she says she apologizes if she missed this, but are there plans to grow, educate organic consumers? Which this is something we have talked about.
Yes.
So
Yes. So there are, and I'm really glad Virginia asked us about that. Our outreach committee has been very active in planning that very thing, because we do know that we need to do a better job of educating the New Jersey, the state of New Jersey, on organic growing and our food system. And it actually is a pretty complicated subject. So we're really we're committed to creating more content and sharing it statewide through our partners and through our own social media and outreach. And thank you for asking that question, Virginia, because yes, we need to do that. And we've enlisted the help of a number of people who we think are talented writers and communicators and pretty knowledgeable about our food system. All right. So I'm just checking to see, Tony, did we ever find Eric?
So Eric, if you're out there, reach out, because we don't see your name in the list. Maybe he signed in as someone else, or
yeah.
know.
So if he's not here, then we're probably going to jump directly to Abby. I'm going to give her the 5-second warning that we're switching to Abby. But I think what we were intending to do was introduce Eric Bremer, who is supervises the New Jersey Department of Agriculture Organic Certification Program. He's someone you should meet, and I will try and work to get him to join another one of our organic open houses coming up, because I want everybody to meet him and consider getting certified if you're a farmer. So with that, I think I can introduce Abby. And let me see here. Let me just share my screen briefly. So Abby has been the executive director of the National Organic Coalition since 2015. The NOC is an alliance of farmers, ranchers, environmental, and consumer advocacy organizations and companies that are dedicated to protecting organic integrity. Abby has been a passionate participant in the organic farming and food justice movement for more than 2 decades and is a former co-owner and operator of a vegetable farm in upstate New York. She holds a master's degree in public policy and nonprofit management from New York University, and lives in Massachusetts with her husband and 2 children. So let me just explain. I invited Abby to come join us today because, as you all know, we have experienced an unprecedented increase in demand for local organic produce in our state throughout the pandemic, and that is just part of a rapidly growing national movement that demands high quality local organic produce, and so and we're seeing that much more legislative support for the organic activities in our nationally and specifically in our state. And so I asked Abby to come talk to us a little bit about what's going on with organic certification and the organic movement nationally. And so I'm going to turn it over to Abby to talk a little bit about that. All right. So Abby, I think
thank you so much.
you're set up to be able to share a screen if you'd like.
Thank you. I actually don't have a screen to share, but
Okay,
we can
no problem.
interact with each other over video. And I am just very excited to be able to join for this conversation and excited to collaborate with NOFA New Jersey to advance organic agriculture. So thank you so much, Nagisa, for the invitation. And as you said just a moment ago, I'm joining you from Arlington, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston, where I live with my husband and 2 children, and hopefully there won't be too much background noise as he's putting the kids to bed here. But I am one of 4 folks who works as part of the team, the staff team for the National Organic Coalition, or NOC. And we are a national alliance of organizations and companies that are working to put in place policies to advance organic and to keep the integrity of the organic program strong. We have a policy director who's based in DC. His name is Steve Etka. Some of you may have met him. He's been working with our coalition for 20 years now, and really working with members of Congress and the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and is very knowledgeable and well-connected in DC in the work that we do there on organic policy. I will also tell you that NOFA New Jersey is a member of our coalition, one of 14 member organizations. NOFA New Jersey participates through the Northeast Organic Farming Association's Interstate Council. So all of the NOFAs together are a member of our coalition, and we really rely on the NOFAs for a lot of expertise and connection on the ground to farmers. We are a cross-sector coalition, so we have environmental groups, and we have consumer groups and companies and certifiers, and also farmers. So we really value the perspective that NOFA New Jersey brings. And we were also super happy to have Nagisa participate recently in a virtual fly-in and lobby day with members of Congress. We met with 53 congressional offices, and also just want to acknowledge and recognize the work that Callie has been doing on organic policy and our ability to work with you over the years. That's been great. But I will say New Jersey's congressional delegation is very important, and even more so now that Senator Booker has stepped onto the Senate Agriculture Committee. So we certainly appreciate being able to partner with you guys and those relationships. So I want to talk for a few minutes, but I do want this to be a chance for interaction and conversation. So what I was planning to do was share some remarks, but also pause and have time for questions and comments and discussion. I really welcome that. So I'm going to leave some space for that. There are 3 different things that I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that we're facing right now with the USDA organic seal and the National Organic Program, and in our work to grow organic. I'm also going to talk about kind of the environment we're in right now with the new administration and some things that we're really hoping we can achieve with a new administration in place. And I want to conclude with just a few thoughts about how all of the folks on the call tonight could become more engaged in some of the organic advocacy work that we're doing with members of Congress and with the Department of Agriculture. And I'll also just mention, we do work also very closely with the National Organic Standards Board. That's the citizen stakeholder board that advises the U.S. Department of Agriculture on the organic regulations. And they also have authority to make sure we don't have toxic materials that are being used in organic food and farm systems. So, Nagisa, I'll just ask, is there anything else you want me to be sure to hit on, or any questions or comments right off the top?
No, I think that's good. You keep going.
All right, I'll keep going. And please do jump in. I'll take a look at the chat box as we go along. So if folks have questions and want to ask them that way, that's great. And feel free to also just jump in with questions when I pause. So I want to talk about 2 different challenges that we're facing right now with the organic program, but also more broadly. And the first issue that I'd like to talk about is the existential crisis of climate change. and the connected crisis of biodiversity loss. And I will say we finally do have an administration and leaders in Congress that are wanting to take action to address climate change. They've started to focus now on the role of agriculture in reducing greenhouse gas emissions and sequestering carbon. So it's exciting to have that conversation taking place. I will say we have been really working to educate members of Congress about what the science says about the impact of organic in reducing greenhouse gas emissions, in sequestering carbon in the soil, and also just helping farmers adapt to an increasingly chaotic situation. We know that within the organic regulations, there's a lot written in there that has to do with healthy soil. That's really the foundation for organic. So within the law, within the regulations, we have requirements about fostering soil fertility, using proper tillage, reducing erosion, using crop rotations, using compost and animal manures in an appropriate way to maintain and improve soil. So we have all of this built into the regulations that really is helping organic farms to sequester carbon and to increase their resilience. So that's really important. And it's also, of course, built into the regulations a prohibition on the use of synthetic fertilizers and pesticides. So that's significant because we know some of those fertilizers are contributing to emissions through nitrous oxide. And we know also that pesticides can have this negative impact on soil health and the microorganisms in the soil. And having that system functioning is, of course, important for the carbon sequestration. So we have some good science here. We are trying to educate policymakers on what that science says and some of the really strong provisions that we have in organic. And for that reason, we believe that organic really needs to be front and center. But here is where the challenge comes in. I think a lot of times organic is not necessarily getting its credit as a climate change solution. So we're really trying to lift that up. We also hear a lot of conversation about regenerative, and I think it's important for us to recognize how organic and regenerative can raise the visibility of the role of agriculture, but we also are raising concerns about the potential for greenwashing when we're talking about the word regenerative. So really wanting to urge that that regenerative build off the foundation of organic and take us to the next level rather than be something that is a watering down or something that maybe is not as impactful as organic. So that's something that we are concerned about and feel like it's really important for us to message on what organic means, what the regulations say, and the role of organic as a climate change solution. And I will just make a couple other comments on this topic. One is that we, at the federal level, we have a lot of climate change legislation moving forward. Our coalition doesn't work on state level legislation, but I know from my colleagues that there's also a lot of healthy soils legislation moving forward at the state level too, and that's great. And we feel like it's really important to embed organic into that type of legislation so that we are doing more research into organic systems and also finding ways to incentivize organic farming and a transition to organic farming where we can. So that's some of the work that we're doing over the course of the next year as some of this legislation is moving forward, really looking for ways to lift organic up in that conversation. And I'm going to just pause for a minute. I'm looking at the chat and I'm seeing the comment from Sherry just asking, can I address what farmers can expect in terms of greater assistance from NRCS with carbon sequestration projects and also farm conservation plans in the future? Our regional centers are understaffed, and this is where me hearing from you guys is so valuable. We are working to try to increase the resources at NRCS and to really build into some of the conservation programs through NRCS more pathways for organic farms to participate and for those farms to be meaningful. So that is some of the focus. And there's a piece of legislation that is going to be introduced. It was introduced last year and it'll be introduced again this year, called the Agriculture Resilience Act. It's a piece of legislation that Shelley Pingree, a congresswoman in Maine and an organic farmer herself, has put forward. And one of the pieces of that legislation has to do with really taking the existing conservation programs that we have and making them more effective and orienting them more towards climate, towards carbon sequestration and also resiliency. So that's one of the pieces of legislation that we're working on. I will also say there's a lot of focus at the national level on a carbon market concept or the use of private markets to try to incentivize climate-friendly agriculture. And NOC is really trying to, alongside that interest in private markets, really lift up the existing USDA conservation programs through FSA and NRCS and make those more robust, because we feel like there's the possibility that organic producers and all of the producers, whether certified or not, all of the producers who have been doing really good work for a long time to protect soils and sequester carbon, that those folks will likely be left out of carbon market approaches, these private markets that are really going to be focused on additionality. So taking folks who aren't using cover cropping and getting them there, which is important too, but we're concerned about making sure organic farmers are included in these policy mechanisms that recognize and incentivize climate-friendly farming. So yes, we very much want to make the existing programs work better. Are there other questions or comments at this point before I move to a second topic? All right, the next topic I want to talk about is becoming more diverse and inclusive as a movement. And I was glad to hear Nagisa talk about the work that NOFA New Jersey is doing. And I will also tell you that for our coalition, racial equity and organic is a very important priority for us. Similar to what Nagisa was saying for New Jersey, I will tell you that Black and Indigenous and other people of color individuals or BIPOC individuals are underrepresented as farm and ranch owners and operators. That's true in conventional agriculture, and it's true in organic systems. We know that BIPOC individuals are about 40% of the US population, so very similar to the stat for New Jersey, but only 3% of organic producers nationally identify as BIPOC. We also know that less than 2% of all US producers identify as Black, and it's less than 1% of organic producers who identify as Black. This is census data that we've looked at from the Ag Census in 2017. And so that's down. It used to be about 40% of farmers and ranchers, about 14% of farmers and ranchers were Black in 1920. But because of decades of racial discrimination and inequitable lending and land ownership policies, that number has been reduced dramatically. So I will also say that from our perspective, equity and inclusion is not a new concept. It's part of the value system of the international organic movement. And I would point there to an organization that many of you might be familiar with, the IFOAM, the International Federation of Organic Agriculture Movements, also known by the simpler name now of Organics International. So they've put forward 4 guiding principles for the organic movement: health, ecology, fairness, and care. And we as a coalition also embrace those principles and feel that one of the challenges and opportunities we have is to really look for ways to become more diverse and inclusive as a movement, to link arms, as NOFA New Jersey is doing, with other organizations to create something that is a stronger, healthier, and more equitable food system. And from my perspective, that is a way for us to, in a stronger, more powerful way, be ready to face these challenges around climate resiliency and food access, and also organic integrity. So I will tell you that this is an issue we talked about just a couple weeks ago when we held meetings with congressional offices. We had about 50 meetings with 50 different offices, and we talked about the importance of supporting USDA's work to tackle a legacy of discrimination. And we talked about the Justice for Black Farmers Act, which was introduced by Senator Booker and several other senators, and just recently introduced in the House of Representatives as well by Congresswoman Adams of North Carolina. So we have that legislation, and we're really urging that Congress think about looking at the needs of farmers of color in all of the food and farm related policies that they're putting forward, whether it's pandemic relief legislation, as we just saw with the bill that was signed into law on March 11th. That has provisions that provide debt relief and some other provisions to help serve the needs of BIPOC farmers. So in that legislation, and also climate change legislation, any policies, we want to be really looking closely at this issue. So I'm going to pause again and just look at the chat, and also very happy to take any questions or comments. I see from Virginia, Senator Booker and Senator Warren are co-sponsoring legislation. And yes, Senator Warren is my senator, and Senator Booker is I think most of your senator. So it's great to see that legislation, that Justice for Black Farmers Act. That's something NOC has endorsed. And I know, Nagisa, you were able to speak with Senator Booker's team about that legislation. I don't know if you have anything that you'd want to add, but we're definitely excited to see that bill.
So I think there is a great focus on financial assistance, which I think is fantastic. But I think the important thing for the people on this phone call, there are a lot of very talented farmers, and I'm glad Sherry is mentioning her interest in private landowners, because it's going to take all the talented farmers of New Jersey to mentor and actually mentor and provide technical support for young farmers who are coming up and interested in farming in order to succeed. Because I think the reality is money is one thing. It's absolutely important. But more important, I think, even than the financial support is the mentorship and support that we can all provide each other so that we can be successful. Because it's so hard to farm that we really are relying on this network to really support farmers coming into the state and trying to be successful. So,
yeah, thank you, Nagisa, for raising that point. I think that is so important. And as you guys are doing that peer-to-peer mentorship is what helps people get started in farming. I know that's how I got started as a farmer. I'm not farming anymore, but that's how I learned, from the community of farmers here in Massachusetts. And then I farmed in upstate New York. And I know the Justice for Black Farmers has a mentorship component to it. It also has a component that's about the government purchasing land and making that land available. So the land access piece is really important. I will say too that we've been thinking about that mentorship piece as well, and looking at if we can be building towards something in the next farm bill that would help provide mentorship to help farms transition to organic. And even over, there's a little bit of concern about providing financial incentives for people to transition to organic. Especially, you have to be a little careful that you're not providing those incentives in market for products where the market may already be flooded. But certainly thinking about how you could maybe compensate farmers for their time to mentor other farmers and work with organizations like NOFA New Jersey and others that already have existing mentorship programs, but help really support those and further incentivize those. That's something that we are are interested in moving forward. And I see Virginia says, I see a couple more comments. I'm just going to look at the chat for a moment. Laura is asking about the regenerative movement. Is it in competition in some ways with the organic movement for resources and airtime with policymakers, given the new administration's commitment to addressing climate through agriculture? And how are we working to bridge that and form broader coalitions? Yes, absolutely. That is an area of concern. And for us, there's the regenerative organic certification now, which is taking the organic certification and building on top of it to create something that is very robust. We want to see programs like that help push organic to move forward and to strengthen in areas where it can get even stronger. We're concerned about the use of the term regenerative in the absence of a clear definition for what that means, and know that greenwashing is such a huge challenge right now with folks, for example, maybe using conventional no-till with glyphosate as a regenerative system. I think we're looking at the science too, and looking to see what the science is saying about carbon sequestration. I think there's a lot of emerging science on it. But yeah, I think we have to be really careful, and we have to talk about the value of the organic certification program as something that involves third-party verification, inspection, a rigorous set of standards, and an enforcement mechanism. And that's not necessarily the case with some of these other regenerative systems that people are talking about. So I see a question in the chat about greenwashing. And I think right now, with the focus on climate change, a lot of folks want to claim that what they're doing is climate friendly. What I'm doing is already climate friendly. And so you have, a lot of, I gave the conventional no-till as one example of something that might be greenwashing. You might have other systems that are very reliant on, you may have systems that are very reliant on synthetic chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, and there's a concern that those, who is really in control of defining what is climate friendly. And when you see a lot of major corporations wanting to define that, then it's cause for concern. And certainly one of the concerns we have with some of the approaches that are being pursued at this point in time with carbon markets is with that kind of system where you have a private market, you have companies that are polluting, wanting to buy the carbon offsets. You may not be doing anything in terms of reducing net emissions. And so we want to make sure that we're actually, while you may be making a more climate friendly agriculture, you're just offsetting emissions from the energy sector. So we want to make sure what we're doing is actually having a net impact. So that's another thing that we're concerned about and raising, as there's a lot of focus right now on carbon markets. Certainly, we support the concept that farmers are part of the solution, and we want to incentivize and recognize what farmers are doing, the good practices that they're using. But we don't want to do that in a way that has no net impact on greenhouse gas emissions. All right, I'm going to move to another topic. And Nagisa, just as a time check, how much longer would you like me to spend?
Well, I was allocating maybe the next 10 minutes till 7:15. Of course, I would love to talk to you for a lot longer than that, but that is not really our intention tonight. So, so that was a trick question, right?
Well, we can definitely stay in conversation with each other beyond tonight, but I will aim to wrap up by 7:15. That's really helpful to keep me on track. And I have just a couple other things I'd like to hit on, but I really appreciate the dialogue and the conversation with folks. So I'll hit on a couple other things, but also continue to look for folks' questions and comments. The next topic I wanted to address is just now that we do have a different administration, kind of the opportunities that we have to make some real headway in strengthening the National Organic Program at USDA. And I will say that it has become clear over the past several years that some of the existing standards we have for organic need to be tightened up to have greater consistency. Also, we're observing that as demand for organic has truly skyrocketed since the organic program was implemented in 2001. So over the last 2 decades, sales of organic products have really skyrocketed. That has also exposed some weaknesses and opportunities for fraud. And so in order to address these problems, we do have to strengthen the regulations. And we know that it's a problem, and viability of organic farms is at stake when you have, for example, fraudulent organic grains that's coming into the US, and that's undercutting grain producers, organic grain producers here. When you have, for example, large industrial organic dairy operations that are taking conventional heifers and bringing them into organic herds over and over again, that's something that can really undercut the price and negatively impact family scale organic dairies. We've had many go out of business in recent years. And also when you have another example would be a large scale organic egg producer that is not providing true outdoor access to the chickens, that can undercut the high integrity operations that are giving access to the outdoors and a chance for chickens to engage in their natural behaviors. So I've hit on 3 of the major areas of concern with those examples, and areas where we have been working for a very long time to try to fix the regulations and make them stronger. I will say under any administration, Obama administration, Trump administration, and other administrations going back, it is hard to, and time consuming to fix the regulations. That has been a huge challenge with having this program housed at USDA, but we're very hopeful that we will get the regulations fixed in this new administration. And so we are looking at the biggest rewrite of the organic regulations. We had a proposed regulation last spring, and we're hoping that it will be finalized this year or next year. And it would really be getting at the problem of fraud in organic supply chains. We're also hoping to close these loopholes that I mentioned around organic dairy and organic egg production. And of course, the other topics that I talked about previously was climate change and racial equity. We appreciate the commitment that's been expressed at the highest levels with President Biden and Vice President Harris, but also with the new Secretary of Ag at USDA, Tom Vilsack, the new old returning Secretary, Tom Vilsack from the Obama administration. We know that he is aware of some of these problems in organic, and we're very hopeful that we'll be able to get these issues fixed. So that is something that we're very much focused on in the new administration. And I'm happy to take questions if folks have any questions or comments about how we work with this new administration or the leadership in Congress to try to advance organic.
And then for flowers, we also have to keep in mind as the plant grew on old wood was formed as
Just going to pause for a minute to see if anybody wants to jump in with a question or a comment.
just since we started out with topiaries.
Yeah, feel free to unmute folks and ask Abby a question if you do have one.
All right.
In today's New York Times, Secretary Vilsack was quoted as saying that we have to change the food system. Do you have any inside information about what changes he might be considering?
I don't know that I have inside information because I'm doing something similar to you, Stephanie. I'm really watching to see what his messaging is and listening to what he's saying. You know, Secretary Vilsack was criticized by a lot of groups as Biden's nominee for USDA Ag Secretary because folks were really looking for somebody who would be forward thinking on issues of climate change and racial equity, and feeling like maybe he wasn't that person. I will say we have seen a focus on those issues kind of in alignment with the priorities that have been articulated from the very top, and also appointments within USDA that have, you know, we have more diverse appointees coming on board at USDA. I will say that one of the things I keep hearing Secretary Vilsack talk about in the past couple of weeks is just how many farmers have to rely on off-farm income and how few farmers can earn their livelihood from farming, and what other profession exists in that way where it's very difficult to earn your livelihood from farming. And so I think that is an issue that he's looking at and thinking about. And I don't know exactly what his plans are in that regard, but I've certainly heard him talk about that.
Can I ask you, you mentioned new legislation that is, you know, that you're trying to get through to prevent fraud within the, you know, the organic system and in order to maintain its integrity, which I think is fantastic. My question would be, how has there been any discussion about this new legislation and how it would affect small producers? Sometimes when these larger bills get passed trying to deal with some of the larger organizations and big ag, you actually can catch the smaller producers kind of in the crossfire. And so my question would be, has there been any discussion or revelation about how those new changes may impact a smaller producer that's raising organically?
That is very much top of mind for our coalition and our members, like something we always think about when we're putting new regulations in place, because inevitably, yes, it is going to catch the smaller producers in the crosshairs. And so there were some specific places in this new regulation where we saw that happening. For example, one of the things the new regulation does is it requires more operations to become certified, because you have a lot of brokers that are not certified and they have organic product passing through, and that's where some of the fraud is coming in. And so we very much support that, but we also were looking at some of the smaller producers and the scope of certification. So for example, operations that are producing seed, are they now going to have to become certified as a handler? And which operations, if you're really doing on-farm seed production, is it really necessary to get those folks certified as handlers? That was a question that we were looking at and making some recommendations to try to minimize the unintended consequences and negative impacts for the small producers. But one comment I would make is I feel certain that this new regulation will ultimately lead to the cost of certification going up, because it is requiring and demanding so much more of certification agencies. And they're going to, and part of what we've realized is we need more professional and more highly qualified inspectors. And so I think the new requirements from the regulation and trying to raise the bar and really professionalize and more fairly compensate inspectors is going to increase the cost of certification. And so we're looking there at how do we work on the National Organic Certification Cost Share Program, which is a certification reimbursement, and make that work a little bit better to help defray those costs. So I think that'll be something that's coming down the line. Okay, I know we're at 7:15. Nagisa, with your permission, I would like to just give a closing thought, if that's okay.
That's great. Awesome.
Okay. So I just really want to encourage all of you to think about becoming more engaged in federal organic advocacy to protect the organic seal, because I think we as an organic movement have this very powerful vision about how we can transform the food and ag system and how we can protect human health and the environment. But we can't realize that vision without some really deep and engaged advocacy with the Department of Agriculture and with Congress. So, and I've already talked about how your congressional delegation is important, Senator Booker now on the Ag Committee, but also you have one Congresswoman, Bonnie Watson Coleman, on the House Appropriations Committee, so she's also really important. So I just want to leave you with the thought that you could be important in these fights that we're facing on protecting organic integrity. Your voice is going to matter. Our partnership with NOFA New Jersey is very important. And I'm just going to put in the chat box my list of 5 different things that you could consider doing to become more engaged in these advocacy issues. And we would love to see this conversation continue. A couple of these things are ways that you can get connected with social media or email to our action alerts and the information that we put out, but also the importance of building your relationships with your congressional delegation and thinking about engaging with the National Organic Standards Board or with NOC in the public meetings that we do twice a year. So thank you again, Nagisa, and all of NOFA New Jersey members and board for this opportunity to connect. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate you spending the time, Abby. All right. Well, that really concludes our planned activities for tonight. I thank everyone for joining us for our annual meeting. I really hope and pray that we can have an in-person annual meeting next year. But thank you very much for joining online, and thank you all for your support. Have a great night.
Night.